Well, it's an art world term, or it's a literary term before it's a cinema term, and the avant-garde is, you know, people literally, if you define it, it's looking ahead, creating new things, new languages, and at a certain point in cinema, I think it was, you know, a kind of evolution of cinema, that things were going to go forward, and that we needed to invent a new language to communicate certain ideas. And so if you were a filmmaker in 1915 or a filmmaker in 1923, most likely you were an avant-garde filmmaker. You were either an industrial filmmaker or an avant-garde filmmaker, because those were moments where the language just kept needing to go forward and forward and forward and communicate new things. And I think it's still possible to be avant-garde nowadays, although it's not as easy to define. And so the idea is that each person is going to have their own vision of what that is, and will have to be persuasive in defining that and defending it. Louise Buñuel, Jean Epstein, D.W. Griffith, John Ford. I mean, I guess the way Vasily meant it was in the sense of that you join these two directors who are very unlikely, and they have two very different careers, and try to find their likenesses. And so this idea that somebody like Benning can influence a filmmaker like Linklater, whose films are seen by millions of people, and Benning's movies are maybe seen by hundreds of people. But that's the legacy or the strength of experimental cinema, is that it can have quite a strong effect on, let's say, the establishment cinema or the industrial cinema, or the, you know, so the avant-garde and the experimental, you know, they've always been important for that, you know, because secretly all of the great filmmakers, you know, every single one of them, and maybe not every single one of them, but quite a lot of them are avid cinephiles. Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, all the, you know, the big-time American filmmakers. They're all experimental film fans. They all, you know, they know this stuff by heart. Kenneth Anger, people like that, Jack Smith, you know. Well, it was very nerve-wracking, you know, to film two people that you respect a lot. So my idea was just to guide them as little as possible, and to give them the room and the space to help me to create the film, and to take the conversations where they wanted to take them. And so that worked for me. No one. I mean, I think I hate superhero movies, man. No, I mean, I don't hate them. I actually like the Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 is maybe of the recent superhero movies. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, I thought was very good. The thing that's, to me, that doesn't really work about the superhero movies is the aspect of vigilantism. Because there's so much vigilantism in the States as it is, people who own guns and think they can take the law in their own hands, and this idea the government's not going to protect us. It's such bullshit, and superhero movies are just propagating this idea that people have to defend themselves and they have to be their own superheroes. I fucking hate that kind of thing, you know? Like, fuck Batman, you know? Like, it's just not an interesting character. You know, there are people like Batman in Michigan that own guns, that they think they're Batman, they're vigilantes, you know? It's not a cool thing, you know, and kids watch those movies and they think it's a cool thing, you know, so it's like, you know, superhero movies for the most part aren't very thoughtful in that way, you know, but Spider-Man 2 is a good one. Well, it's a film school for people who can't afford to go to film school. Or it was for me. Yes. That's the idea of the Cinematheque for me. It was, you pay the price of a ticket to go see a movie in a great theater in a 35mm print, and that's much cheaper than paying $20,000 to go to a school. And also, if you look over here, there's all these film cans on the floor, and they, you know, so the role of the Cinematheque is to be active in the pursuit of preserving images so that we can enjoy them. As Godard and Truffaut said when they were petitioning for André Langlois to stay in the French Cinematheque in 1968, when he was being expelled by the then cultural minister of France, they said, there are people like us who enjoy seeing old movies, and if you're like us and you want to enjoy seeing old movies, that help us to preserve the cinematheque. Well, definitely all of the films of Pedro Costa, all of the films of Harun Farocki. The programming in this festival is very good, very singular, and very, consistent, I think. I, of course, haven't seen everything in the program. That's impossible. But I'm in the program, so they must have good taste.